Suli, thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure, bro.
We've tried a few times to make this happen, and finally you're here. And I'm excited for a number of reasons, because I was thinking, when I was growing up, there was some people who I didn't know, but I would see them from time to time. These sort of poets, so you got the George the poets who, there was a girl called Sophia. I would see these people. And then there was you as well. I would always see you, just different videos, but I never really knew, what it is you do, how it is you do what you do. And I guess for some people, when they see folks who are successful, who've achieved sort of great things, they just see them as like far removed, unreachable. They probably got some secret source somewhere that the rest of us don't know. So I'm hoping this podcast is a chance to go into your process a bit and lift the veil a bit on how it is you do what you do.
Mentioned, like I know them my people.
Yeah. So I'm excited about it. I suppose a good place to start is probably where you grew up. So you grew up in a Ghanaian, would you say a traditional Ghanaian household?
No, my household. So it was kind of like, we was on the borderline of being like traditional in our values, but not very traditional in our practices. But to give context, I lived in Ghana for about 3 years when I was around my son's age, between the ages of like 4 to about 9 or 5 to about 9. So I had a very, very like strong relationship with Ghana, that culture, and I went to school at the time where when you went to school in the sense that you got stuff wrong, you got beat. So I've had licks with a ruler over here. Yes. I've had smacks with a cane on the backside. I've had knocks on the head. You get what I'm saying? So I've had the full range of like trauma, of education and stuff. So, but my parents were always, for context, my grandma and grandfather moved to the UK in around like the late 70s, 80s kind of. So my mum actually grew up in London, so even though they were like the first wave of like immigrants, so she went to school in London before going back to Ghana, and my dad, she went secondary school in London, and my dad was born in London but grew up in Ghana. So they kind of had like this mixture of like mindsets growing up.
So they're like progressive?
Pretty much like, so it was like, although education, like any African household, was always like the staple, my dad was like heavily into philosophy, into like reading, he came from like kind of like an educated background as well. So he was always about like open, like, is it the word be lateral thinking kind of stuff like that. That was always his mindset. So
would you say because a lot of people who hear Ghanaian household, Nigerian household think you must be a lawyer, a doctor. Were they sort of there? Or if you told them I wanted to be a expressive dancer, they'd be like, yeah.
No, hell no. I studied law, bro. I studied law in university. There wasn't that liberal, you know what I'm saying?
You said progressive. I'm just trying to work out how progressive they were.
When I say progressive, I think they were more progressive in the sense that they allowed me to explore within the context of like my creativity within the household. But there was always like within the confines of this education is the most important thing. But that being said, there was like, I speak to like my friend, she's Nigerian, and I used to go cinema with my dad all the time. Like even as an adult, I go cinema with him, and she was like, I'd never go cinema with my dad as an adult or as I got older. But we've just always had that kind of like explorative way of thinking, But education was like
still a key thing.
Was still God, yeah.
Did you have siblings growing up or?
2, yeah.
And were they? I mean, are you the oldest? Are you the
middle? So 1 older sister and 1 younger sister.
And do you think they sort of parented all of you the same, or do you think there was a difference in how they?
Yeah, I think pretty much. But I feel like, so my parents spent a lot of time in Ghana. So, and this is why I talk about it being more progressive, because they got to a certain place when it was like, I was around like 15, 16, living with my aunt. So it was kind of like they gave us a bit more freedom. So I'd say we kind of like, my younger sister spent more time with them than any of us. So we were kind of like more free at that point. But we was always just, as long as we got good grades, we was always like free to kind of dabble in other stuff, like playing basketball a lot, and they didn't mind, And at that time, growing up in Wood Green, it was kind of like the alternative, finding something to do with your time was the most important thing in it. So as long as you were studying, you could do whatever you want. You didn't study, then you couldn't do. But as long as you wasn't hanging around.
So you grew up in Wood Green?
Yeah, Wood Green, yeah.
And I noticed this later on about my mum, but she was very, very smart in that my mum enrolled me for so many after-school activities and extracurricular stuff I had no time to misbehave.
Stay busy. Yeah.
I didn't know that was what she was doing. But I would be doing first aid courses.
First aid courses.
Just doing all sorts. Like, what am I doing here? But it's because when people ask me, do you want to come out and get involved in foolishness? I'll just be like, I'm busy.
Yeah,
and be like, I've been busy since I was like 10, 12. Were your parents the same? Like keeping you out of trouble, especially in Wood Green?
I feel like growing up in Ghana really helped because I came back with a different perspective on like what cool was. You know, back then we used to get ranked in class, like the ranking was first, second, third. Like that's how they'd rank you at the end of the exams. It wasn't like A, B, you know what I mean? So the people that got first on top of the class weren't looked at, like they were looked at as cool. Like, you know, you got first, you're smart. And people almost embarrassed the lower you got in the rankings. So when I came over here, I always thought all the badness and talking back to teachers and stuff like that. I never found it. I thought this is a bit weird, like even calling teachers by their first name. So my parents really didn't need to pull me away from that. I mean, at a certain age, it gets enticing, but it was more so I had a different value system. So they didn't need to keep me busy. I kind of kept myself busy with like doing sports and doing things which I thought like were going to take me further, you know?
That culture clash you speak about is so interesting because it just made me realize an experience I had. I remember, so I grew up in Nigeria for 5 years. I was in Nigeria for 5 years and I came here. But away from, even though I left Nigeria, of course I never left Nigeria because my parents were still parenting me. So very much in the house, we still had the Nigerian system. I remember the first time one of these kids, I think his name was Jaden, right? And I'm sure there's great Jadens out there. But this particular Jaden...
My godson's called Jaden, so be careful.
I'm sure there's lots of good Jadens out there. This particular Jaden, I think I remember in school where, you know, I was such a law-abiding, you know, whatever, like in year 7. And I think the teacher said something like, Jaden, put your bag on the, you know, take your bag off the table and put it on the, and he was like, you do it. And I literally said, yeah. Like, you know, for those who are listening, I was like, my eyes opened. And I'll be so honest, he opened the Pandora's box. Because I never thought you could do that to teachers, like talk back to them. I should say I then ended up kind of misbehaving because, you know, Jaden influenced me. But that culture clash the matrix, is so crazy how growing up in Ghana, there's just some things that are non-negotiable.
Not in the slight, bro. Not in the slightest, because you feel the consequences of your actions.
They'll literally beat you. All that sort of stuff.
Not so much now, but back then, you know, because I think now a lot of the parents that are coming up are like my age, and like, you know, they're parents that are kind of like, we're very gentle, you know, which I don't know is a good thing or a bad thing.
Naughty corner.
Yeah, naughty step. You know them ones, isn't it? You know, discuss, like, you know. So I feel like that is having an impact, you know, in international schools at least. I don't know about normal schools, but I know like a lot of people over there in that context.
So you went to university, as you said. You studied law. My parents' dream, like my son will be a lawyer. But you found your voice in poetry.
Yeah.
What kind of shift had to happen sort of mentally, even internally, whilst you're in university to start thinking you could do something different?
I think this is why, like, the people we meet in our lives are very like important catalysts to where we end up. So like my typical day, first year, my typical day would be like, I'd wake up maybe like 2 p.m. If I was on time to go to a lecture, I'd go to the lecture. I'd come back home, spend all day on the laptop, sleep, watch anime all night, then do the same thing again. So I wasn't really going to lectures and school. I never really wanted to do law. I always say to people, like, my mum is the one that filled out my application for Sheffield. I didn't know what uni I was going. I
love that.
I'm clever. I'll be honest. I'm academically, I know how to. It's not something I struggled with. If I had applied myself, I'd probably be more brilliant. But it wasn't something I struggled with. So I knew I could get the grades. I wanted to go to Loughborough potentially because I had a good basketball team and I like basketball. But I was oblivious about Sheffield. You know, like people who were like, this is my dream university. My mum took me to the open day. We sat down there. I was completely like, you know, so I got into university in a very passive mind state. You know, I was like, okay, kind of like, what am I going to do with myself? So it wasn't until I failed one of my exams the first year and I had to resit them in the summer. And I said, I'm never doing a resit in the summer again, that I really started taking the exam seriously. But it was kind of like, I was on this kind of cycle of just waking up, sleeping, you know, there was no desire. I listened to music a lot, but, you know, I'd stopped playing basketball. So I wasn't really like inspired by anything. We did... It was in second year, we were at a Thanksgiving dinner. One of my friends had a Thanksgiving dinner because one of her flatmates was American.
Gotcha.
And one of the guys there was like, oh, let's do a rap battle. Do you understand what I'm saying? And I was like, oh, like, this is stupid, but I like rap battle. I used to do it when I was in college. I went to college Midway. It was something that I enjoyed, you know. We used to watch them all coming up. So we had this like impromptu rap battle, so corny, so immature. And I kind of beat him. And I beat him in the rap battle. Cool guy. And I think he had this issue whereby like, maybe he felt slighted, but he was like, oh, I'm president of the ACS, which is African Caribbean Society, and we're doing an event, so you should come and perform, like basically in a way that if you're so good at like what you do, you should come and perform. And I was like, I'm not a rapper, I don't do rap, but I'll do some kind of poetry. And I just wouldn't back down for the challenge, innit? Because I've always writing lyrics, most people growing up in London did. So I started working on this poem, you know, and then eventually the day came for the rehearsals. And when it came to the rehearsals, like me and the guy both had to do art. And the guy was like, you go first, innit? And I went first and I did this piece. And I'm good, man. That piece killed it. It was like killed it to the point where no one wanted to come afterwards.
That's the worst thing. This is why you have to, it's a high-risk strategy to make someone good go first.
Nah, I didn't even expect it to be that. Like the response was crazy. I was like, oh, cool. So as a result of that, when we did the talent show, it went off again, like everyone went crazy. So I kind of became like known in the uni for being quite good at that stuff. And I've always been like, I don't know, how do I say? I'm trying to put the story in the right place. So as I did that performance, other universities saw me and they started inviting me to come and perform. Like I was saying earlier, I've always been very entrepreneurial. My favorite artists were like Jay-Z and all that stuff. So the wheels started turning because I'm an internet kid, and at the time there was Facebook. So I just started making content, posting it on Facebook, just because it was like something to do. So I've been like, when I say I'm a social media expert, I've been on social media, I've lived it from when it was the start. So when I met my wife in second year, she's my wife now, but she was my girl at the time. She was like, yo, I know you're not serious about law, but you better be serious about something. And I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna be serious about. And she was like, you're quite good at the poetry stuff. You need to take it seriously. So then she just started like emailing different universities and like started
Get you a helper, man.
Oh yeah, and that's why I say the catalyst for that was my wife kind of being like, oh, you need to find a profession. Although like I was always driven and I always wanted to do something, she was like, you need to find a profession. And it kind of, like I said, it became like a vehicle which I could express my creativity, but also my entrepreneurial ambitions through.
There's so many strings there. I kind of want to zone in on that experience you had. So, because a lot of people are looking for this thing called flow. I was watching this film. What's the name? It's the one with the animations. I think it's a Pixar film where the guy's playing keys.
Soul. Yeah.
And it really does well to capture this idea of flow, right? When the guy's playing the piano flow and he's just one and he feels like this is it. This is the thing. A lot of people are looking for that feeling, right? You know, they try different things. What you're describing when you were sort of performing, and I don't know if you can remember back, like when you were first performing in that ACS event, whatever, and you say something and the crowd erupts, you know, in that moment, was that when you were like, I think I found something? Or was it, or you know, was there so much happening that you didn't really?
I think, to answer your question, I think a lot of people actually know what they're kind of good at, in the sense that there's a trajectory in their life that kind of like indicates to them what they're good at. But because it comes naturally, or in some capacity naturally to you, you're a bit dismissive of it. So looking back, because now to this day, I just say to myself, it's not even poetry, storytelling. And looking back through my years, leading to that point, I've always been a storyteller, in the sense that when I was in primary school, like we did like a whole leavers performance, and they asked me to come to the front and do like this like dance in the front. I'm not even a dancer, but you know, to do like one of the main attractions. When I was finishing secondary school, my teacher came to me and he said, oh, we need someone to do the leavers speech for the whole class. We want you to do it. And then, you know, in my mind, I wasn't putting the two and two together. It's only going backwards that I can kind of see that I kind of always had this natural tendency to be able to present myself in front of an audience. And I'll say that comes from my dad, because that's what my dad is. Like in every room, he's always like the storyteller. He always like has something to say, you know. And like even my son, when when they did the nativity, whatever. Like he got a role, and recently did another thing. He got the lead role. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like,
let's go.
Yeah, he got a role. Well, he got not the lead role, but the big role. This girl, but you know what I mean? But it's kind of like people recognize early on. So I think for me, it was more so me connecting with something that I've always had and being like, okay, cool. But because it came so naturally to me, I never looked at it and be like, oh, this is really, it's just normal. You assume that everybody can do it. You assume that, it's not that difficult. And I see that time and time with people when they have a natural ability to do something and they're dismissive of it because whether it's natural, whether it's nurture, whatever, but because it's come to them in a way that they didn't grind and, you know. So I think the best players sometimes in sports that you see growing up are usually the ones that, like, they had to work the hardest to get good. Because the ones that came naturally, they never understood why you need to work hard because it just came to them.
Yeah.
And I think that's a similar kind of experience.
I mean, that nature-nurture thing is, I mean, it's age-old back and forth, right? When people look at anyone who's successful and some will dismiss it and say, oh, yeah, he's just naturally gifted, you know?
Yeah.
But anyone who knows, you know, there's that whole, it takes, what?
10,000 hours.
10,000 hours, or it takes... You know, it takes like 10 years to become an overnight success or that sort of stuff, you know, because I think people probably would look at you and say, oh, yeah, you're just good with words, you know, but they're not aware of your process, you know, of how that works. Like, take us through that. Like, what's your process?
I think even before I started writing poetry, I'd probably written like, because just like rapped and listening to rhyme, I discovered hip hop when I was 16 years old, innit? Like, so quite late. No, my GCSEs, yeah. So it was like, I just fell in love with using words to tell a story. Before that, I used to write stories in English. Like I read Lord of the Rings when I was in
Elite.
Yeah, I read Lord of the Rings when I was in year 6. So, you know what I mean? Lord of the Rings, year 6. So I once read the most books in my library. I've always liked writing stories and stuff like that. So I'd put in a lot of work. And I used to have like lyric books like this thick that no one would ever listen to, but I've always put in a lot of work when it comes to writing. So at this point, people say to me, how do you write? And I say, bro, like, I rarely sit down when it comes to like poetry or whatever. I sit down and write. Like, I'm constantly writing in my head. Like, I'm constantly like, I'll write a line here, write a line there, write a line. By the time I sit down to put it together, it's like, oh, I have something, you know? So I think my process is very like intuitive now, but it's always happening. Like, it's always going on. And this is because before I was full-time, I used to work a lot of jobs. So I used to have to be that person who was like writing on the back of receipts and putting stuff down. You know what I mean? I had to do it continually. So I got to a point where it was just like, my mind is always like putting stuff together. So even as you're saying stuff like, you're talking about soul and all this stuff, like I'm thinking, oh yeah, that flow thing, there's a piece there. Maybe there, you know, it's always...
So you're just always on?
Yeah, but you don't realize it until you sit down and start putting those things you put together. But I'm always typing something on my phone.
But does it feel like a lot though? Like to be always on in that way, or do you not really see it as on? It's just kind of the way you are.
Since I've had kids, it feels like a lot. Before I had kids, it didn't. Since I've had kids, because you're always thinking about so many things with the kids as well. Before that, it never felt. But now it does feel like. But I like it because it means that you're not wasting time. You know, it's
fascinating because I mean, I'm obsessed with framing. I always tell people I'm all about framing. You know, any room I'm in, any board I'm on, any discussion that's happening, I'm the guy people come to be like, so how should we put this together? You know, I'll be like, what you're really saying? You know, 3 diagrams, and people are like, oh, I get it. And every situation I'm in, my default is to think, well, how do we package this in a way that sort of makes sense? You know, how do we divide this up? And again, I mean, I think some people might think, oh, this must be exhausting to always be thinking like this, but you don't really think that you're doing anything because it's just your way of being. Yeah. Just like my poetic friends, I have some extremely poetic friends. Everything they just see through the lens of, well, who knows? You know, so I think you know what I'm saying. Just like how you approach, you know,
it's how you see the world.
It's how you see the world, and it just
world.
Feels natural. But there's still a process.
Yeah.
Like, what does it take if you were speaking to a younger, maybe a guy in first year uni who maybe has discovered, hey, I think I have something. can you just kind of just keep doing it and see what happens? Or what would you say it takes to really achieve something with that thing he's discovered?
To achieve the actual craft. So writing and the imaginative and the creative side, you can develop that intuitively, but to achieve the actual craft, it's just putting in the reps. You have to be, I've performed in the air, I've performed on stages, I've performed in arenas, I've performed in little rooms, I've performed on the side of the street. Like, you have to put in the reps to understand how to connect with an audience, you know, how to really how to know when the audience is with you, how to know when you're losing them, you know, to the point where when you're writing, you're reading it back to yourself and you feel like, okay, I'm going to lose them here. I'm going to lose, you understand? You don't always get it right, but that's only comes from repetition and execution and over and over again, you know. I see it very much the same way athletes see it, like, it's creaking the chair. Hopefully it doesn't mess up.
You're good. Keep going.
But I see it very much like, you know, athletes, they get their shots up. And obviously they're not going to make every single shot in a game, but your mind has been framed over and over again of like, back to back to back. So a lot of people start doing, and I'm like, the thing about poetry is like, it's a very forgiving crowd. When you first, like, you can say whatever and everyone, you know, clicking. Sometimes you don't understand what they're saying.
I mean, but what happens if you are losing the crowd though?
Huh?
What happens if you're on the stage and you're like, I think I'm losing them here?
So a lot of people, a lot of poets specifically, haven't done anything where the stakes are high enough for them to experience that. If you go to an open mic and there's only a few people, they'll click all the way through.
Yeah.
If you're doing like a 20-minute set, people click all the way through and be like, where's the next guy coming on? It's only when you've got like an hour and a half on a stage and you realize the stakes are high and need to keep this, that you start to realize these techniques. It's only when, like, obviously I do spoken word, but I speak at conferences, you know, I do comedy, it's only when you're in front of different audiences where the stakes are higher that you start to realize that, okay, I need to get them back. But a lot of people don't even get to that point in their career, and they're quite content to be in the, you know, which is like, it's happy for them, but it's also a dangerous place to be in your industry where there's no accountability. You haven't raised the stakes enough. This is my career. The stakes are high. You know, I have family to provide for. So
it's so fascinating because I'm not a poet, but you know, there was a period where I think I made pretty much all my money that year from speaking, and it's a slightly similar thing where you're always cognizant of how you're being received and whether something's landing. And it's not even visual cues like people clapping or nodding, whatever. It's just a sense of like, am I at one with the people I'm speaking to right now? Are we in sync? Yeah. And it's a very odd thing to describe because there's some younger people who maybe are getting into public speaking or whatever it is like to be a musician. Like you feel it as well we're performing. Well, you just kind of have a sense that we're out of sync. And sometimes it's acknowledging it and being like, if in the music set, it might be like, you know what, guys, I'm not doing that song. Let's do another song.
You understand what I'm saying?
Or sometimes it's actually, especially in speeches, maybe where I'm going somewhere, I'm making like a complicated speech or something, I'm speaking about a contentious issue. Sometimes it's actually just sitting in it as well and being like, okay, this is very uncomfortable right now. I can feel like people aren't with me, but I'm going to continue. I'm going to sit in it, and this will be a learning curve.
In a way.
There's days where you have to hold the L.
Yeah, you realize you didn't run. You have to hold the L. You get what I'm saying? You have to take them L's. You have to take them L's. I've been booed off stage. I felt it.
No way.
I felt it.
Boo's crazy though. Why they booing you? Did anyone throw a tomato? Like what? Boo was crazy.
Wrong place, wrong time. Wrong. It was like a student night. It was a student event. So basically, my friend is a DJ.
Yeah.
And he DJs at this massive night. The uni we both went to the same uni in Sheffield. So they called him back every year, a few years ago, to come and DJ, innit? So one year they called him back and he was like, yo, I've got dancers on stage, but also I want you to come on and do a piece to introduce me before I start DJing. So imagine there's been a 2-hour award ceremony, and now everybody's tipsy, drunk, whatever, they've been cheering in a whole auditorium. And now they're like, okay, it's time for the DJ, to the point where even the hosts were like, we got to get off the stage. It's time for the DJ. They ran off the stage. And before my guy starts up the deck, he goes, guys, I've got a few seconds for you just to listen to my guy. You know, he's got some piece to share, innit?
Oh, so that's not a good setup.
It's not. But I don't blame him. It's my own lack of experience. You know, now I could probably have spun it, but back then I didn't have that level of like experience. So I step out onto the stage, immediately start going into one like hard hitting piece, like in front of like I said, like a whole auditorium full of drunk students. And it's also international students, not all of them even speak English. And they're looking at like, I ain't got time
Who's
for
this
this.
guy?
They're like, boo, get this guy out, you know what I'm saying? And it starts, if you've ever been booed, it starts with one, yeah? Then it goes to the other. And then before you know it, the whole auditorium is like, yo, boo. And I felt awful, bro. It's one of the worst experiences, to the point where I left the stage and my train wasn't due to the next morning. I started walking to the train station. I was going to camp out there. Because listen to this. After this, I had to go. We were staying at my friend's apartment. All the boys were there. I didn't know none of these people. This is their first experience of meeting me.
Yeah.
So I had to go back to the apartment, after being embarrassed on stage. And you know, like, these white guys are just friendly, like, good job, mate. Like, good mate. You know, which makes it worse. You know, that kind of like, you tried, you know what I mean?
Were camera phones like big at this time?
Nah. I wish there was.
This is the joys
Yeah.
of... You spoke about this 10,000 hours thing. I won't age myself, but I'm not a Gen Z. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
My 10,000 hours were far away from any camera.
Yeah.
Like the speaking, in my case, the playing, the singing, all the music. I've done, like, especially in my local, say, church, or that when I was super young.
Yeah.
I must have spoken like 200 times.
Yeah.
To like 10 people.
Yeah.
One of them is more interested in the WhatsApp packets.
Yeah.
So, what is it's the space rate that? But I'm just and without knowing it, you don't realize those are your 10,000 hours, right?
Yeah.
But now with maybe some poets coming up behind you, from day one, their first poem is on TikTok.
Yeah.
Their second poem maybe goes viral.
Yeah.
So they're being watched by so many more people. And they feel like they have to be perfect. And I realized this really interesting thing with my little brother. I guess he's he's kind of age group, where a lot of them have accounts, but don't post anything.
Yeah.
Because in their mind, the only post worth making are like,
the one,
your birthday.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And two, the big
achievements,
maybe. And I just wonder, like, if you could speak to that generation who are like, okay, but Suli, you got a chance to bomb. If I bombed on TikTok, I'm done. Like, if I bombed online, I'm done. Like, what would you say?
I took one of my guys to a stand-up night. I took him there, open mic, because sometimes you go there, practice, like, and it was his first time, like, you know, it was his first time ever doing it. And he went on stage, and he was like, I thought it was okay, but he was like, this is horrible, blah, blah. And he's got quite a big social following, he was like, horrible. And I said something to him I didn't realize, only in hindsight, I said it to him. I was like to him, bro, this is the worst feeling to you, but nobody here is going to remember. Nobody here cares. Like, everyone's going to wake up tomorrow and they're going to live with their lives. I said, you can post this online. Someone's going to look at it. If they don't like it, they're just going to keep on scrolling. Nobody's thinking about you that much. You know, and he said it to me, he goes, now that he's done like maybe like almost 100 performances, like getting out there, he was like, bro, that advice like really made a difference. I didn't even realize that, but that's how I learned to view it, in the sense that nobody is thinking about you that much. When it's good, everyone will congratulate you. When it's bad, people will say it's bad and carry on with their lives. You have to internalize that and be like, what's the next step, you know? And I have to really tell a lot of young people, nobody cares enough about you for you to be worrying about, be overthinking, and nobody cares, bro.
That's actually one of the cons, I think, of this, or pros or cons, depends how you see it, of this generation where, you're right. Or initially what we said is true, which is that when you're starting out, a lot of people are watching you and there's a lot of pressure. But at the same time, there's so much now that, to your point, no one really cares. That things move so quickly. Now, back in the days where there were only a few poets, you know, sure, you might be front page of of some local magazine because you bombed, whatever.
Yeah.
These days, to your point, someone scrolled on and there's a new video. So
the next video, there's a talking turtle. They don't care. You know what I'm saying? Like, the people's like, and I think that's the best benefit, because when we think about stuff we post, we think we're thinking about how the audience is going to react. Really, we're just thinking about the people we know and what their reaction is going to be to it and how they're going to view us. And that's why people only want to post highlights. But the reality is, like, those people, they don't care enough either. And even if they do, their opinion is that the one that's going to change the difference, because they've known you their whole life anyway. It's not going to be the difference maker from where you are to where you're trying to be.
That's such a good reframing. That is, and I think that's going to make a lot of people, if they heed, like, it's like freedom to just be like, what do I actually want to post and what do I want to be? You know, just putting it out there, not feeling like
this is the best day and age. I've learned to look at things from a positive lens. For me, this is the best day and age to create social media. Like I said, I've been on social media. I said I'm going to change my LinkedIn profile. I say I'm a social media expert, not because I studied it, but because I've lived it. I've gone viral on every platform, like, except for Snapchat. But I've had that
how
experience.
does one go viral on Snapchat?
You can go. I'm sure you can
Really?
go viral. I don't know.
Just get random ads from
I don't know. I'm sure you can anyway.
Snapchat. You know, I'm fighting for my life. I'm hanging on.
No, it's a generational thing.
You know, I don't be. You know, I'll be opening chats like, so who are you? What?
Yeah.
Sorry, who are you?
I'm literally.
My most typed phrase is, who's this? I'm like, sorry, who are you again?
Bro, I don't like go on Snapchat. I don't know how things come up in my feed, etc. But I'm in that sense, I'm saying, in my opinion, this is the best day and age to be on social media, in the sense that I think it's such a valuable opportunity to create in this day and age, because now when you create, the algorithms are pushing it towards communities that want to see it. And your friend might not even see your post. Before you used to post and it's awful, and your friend may. Now it's not like that. So there's so much, the stakes are lower. You know, you can post 1,000 times a day on TikTok, doesn't matter. But the upside is higher. Before, you'd post one bad video on YouTube, everyone disliking it, we don't like you, unsubscribe, blah, you know what I mean? Now I feel like it's got like a lot of advantages that people are overlooking, because they're like, it's too commodified, it's too like, you know, I'm like, nah, there's opportunity everywhere.
I mean, again, I love the framing. I'm in on the framing. I think that is the game changer, is when you start to reframe this. If you're someone who wants to put yourself out there, it's so important you also have like an adaptive mindset, because I still think of Twitter or X like it was when, like, in 2009 when I was a troll online, and I was like, no, I still think it's that. Yeah. It's not that. It's changed so many times. And I mean, that's another issue. I mean, Twitter, it's been so ruined. That used to be my favorite app. Yeah, I used to love the jokes, the wordplay, the kind of wittiness. Now it's done. Yeah, I want to talk about, so some may be new to this, right? They're like, okay, this guy's making a lot of sense, right? But I think it's important they understand just the sheer sort of breadth of your impact, right? So yes, you're a poet, you've done speeches, you're good, you're great with words, you had your own podcast. But we're talking about millions and millions of people seeing your stuff here. We're talking about, the likes of someone like Will Smith inviting you out. Is it for dinner, for breakfast?
Yeah, chilling. Yeah, chopped out.
How do you handle that level of attention?
It's weird, because when it went back then, 1 million views was really like 1 million views.
Oh, it was serious. Yeah, you were genuinely famous.
Yeah, it's 1 million, like walking down the street. Oh, this, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I guess it's only now that I'm really starting to see the impact in a way that's really like touching me. I feel like maybe I've got kids now, so I'm a bit more emotional. But before, it used to be like, oh, I love your video, it's popular. Now, like, I was in Dubai. I just get back on Monday. I was in Dubai and I did like an event out there. My wife was like, we should do an event. So I'll just put out 24 hours. If you're in, you should just come. And a lot of people pulled up. We did an event. Nice. Very, very dope. But what happened was, like, 2 people came up to me. One guy came up to me. And I actually messaged him before Dubai, because I saw an article on Instagram, and the article was about a guy that moved from the UK to Dubai and in a year became a millionaire after his business was failing, struggling, living in a hostel with his wife. And when I liked the article, the guy messaged me and he was like, bro, like, watching your videos was one of the key catalysts for me growing up and making those decisions. So when I was in Dubai, he came up to me and he was like, you realize how, like, instrumental it was in people's lives, because the way he was overwhelmed for me to meet and be like, this was such a significant thing in my life. I was like, oh, like, it's impacting people. And I met another guy and he came out as well, and he said he's been listening to me for 10 years. So what happened to him, tragic story, when he was younger, his brother threw a pen, landed in his eye, blinding one of his eyes. Yeah, so it's like when he was 8 or something. So he's grown up not having vision in one of his eyes. And he said at one point, because of the muscles, he had to have his eyes removed. So he said the eye removed. So he goes, when he was in hospital, there was a time when he was like in complete darkness that entire time, like, because he can't move both eyes, because it's like if you move one eye, the other moves in the muscle. And he said, like, I used to listen to your videos at that time when I couldn't, And he says that's because when I was growing up, listening to you is what taught me how to speak English. He goes, for 10 years, just hearing your voice and now finally meeting you. So it's kind of like, the more distance that comes between the videos, the more you start to see people being impacted. And now it's like, wow, like these really change people's lives. You know, people message me all the time and be like, I listened to your video 10 years ago and I started my business. Now I'm retired. Now I've done, you know what I mean? And I'm like, yo, you owe me a percentage or something. But you know what I mean? It's that starting to see the impact. Like, you know, like my friend Taz, for instance, you know, he listened to my videos. He came to London. You know, now he's in like the lead in One Piece, you know, Netflix, you know what I mean? And I'm like, wow, like, you know, and he's like, bro, I owe it to you. Like to the point where he's in this massive international Netflix adaptation, and he came down to my son's karate to just come and teach the kids because he's like, I owe you, bro. Do you understand what I'm saying?
That's amazing, man.
So I think now you're really starting to see the impact. You know, unfortunately, like I'm not that old where it's like, oh, you know, some people it's like, why? I'm not bitter about it. It's like, wow, I'm experiencing the repercussions of the work that I put out there at a time when I can really like appreciate them and just keep on like reaping off it.
That's amazing, man. I mean, those are amazing stories, of course. And but what's even more for me powerful is there's probably so many stories you'll never hear, right? Because people don't always 110%. Tell you. Like we always, you know, people always talk about they put out a video and you know there's 10 comments. I'm like, yeah, but there's 300 views. Yeah. So like there's 300 people who saw that and who didn't think to comment, but it could have done something for them. Exactly. And the way I always describe impact to people sometimes is like, you know when you go to the lake or whatever, and you have a stone, and you chuck the stone in the water, and there's a splash, and you go, like, cool, and then you walk away. Most people see the impact as the splash. What they don't see is the stone then making its way through the lake, you know, going down, causing further tremors, ripples. Then it goes all the way down. It's disrupting the local ecosystem. It lands on the seabed. Further tremors go down. All that impact you just don't see, right?
Yeah, it's that butterfly effect.
It's nuts to think about how many people are watching, inspired, you know, just totally being transformed by you being consistent. And that's the one thing I think it's important that you're aware of, just like away from even just the quality of the work you put out, your consistency is genuinely inspirational for a lot of people, because I think that's probably the hardest thing for people is to actually, being good is, you know, some people can be occasionally great, right? Yeah. But to be consistently good over and over again, that's like, I mean, that's another level. And I think that's something you've demonstrated for a long time.
Oh, I appreciate that, because I always feel like I'm not consistent enough.
Listen,
you're
glad.
I'm
way,
glad.
I mean, the fact that people can say 10 years ago, you know, suggests that it wasn't like you put out a random video and disappeared. Yeah. But like I said, when I was younger, I would see videos, you know, and be like, oh, there's that guy, you know, and you keep going. And now I'm still seeing videos like that. That is, I mean, that's something.
Yeah, I think reflectively, sometimes look at it and be like, oh yeah, like you meet some people and they'll be like, oh, I met you through this. And you'll be like, how did you even see that? I came to you through that. And you're like, some things you even forgot that you did. Like one guy came from Australia and he was like, he came to my event. He was like, yo, one of my favorite pieces is the one you did. But I even forgot about that. I didn't even know there was people who still, you understand what I'm saying? It's like, you know.
Let's reflect on your life beyond poetry, because it was interesting when you came in, you know, I was like, you know, we're going to be talking about this, you know, but I've also seen you do this, you know, i.e. you had a podcast talking about entrepreneurship. Yeah. And I was like, huh? You're an entrepreneur? You know, is that, you're like, that's one of my passions. And I was like, oh, interesting. And then I'm like, okay, well, how do you balance both? And you're like, no, I don't even use that paradigm. So, I mean, how do you think about your work?
Yeah, I think the art is the product, you know what I mean? The art that I make is like the tool that I have, you know, like some people have the like ingenuity to make an iPhone, to make like a Tesla. My ingenuity is like, I make these poems and you build a business around it and see how you can distribute it, you know. Fortunately, like I've had great mentors that like kind of help guide me in the right direction. Like I was talking to one of my mentors the other day, Sol Klein, good friend of mine. I met him like 10 to 12 years ago. It was always kind of, and we're always very like, I'm always like, yo, I want to build the next big fintech. I want to build the $1 billion, like, you know, Coinbase or whatever. But he's always reminding me that this is your product, that, you know, the storytelling, the being on stage. So it's like, how do you scale that? And I didn't have the words to articulate at the time. But for me, that was always the case, because I grew up, first of all, I was in a niche, and I grew up understanding the value that if I want to do something long term, I'm going to have to make it to make me money. One of the reasons why I remember I wanted to play basketball. I love playing basketball, but obviously, you know, every kid loves playing sports. And I remember actually doing law And during one of the first classes, the teacher was like, the most a lawyer can make, the top lawyer will make is 250K. And obviously that's good money, but in my naive head, thinking that, but basketball players make hundreds of like tens of millions. Why the hell would I? So from then I checked out of law. So I was like, if I was going to go to anything else, it's going to have to be making me millions in the sense that it has to make sense. So a lot of people look at it as poetry, but for me, I look at it like content creation. I look at it as speaking. I look at it as storytelling. These are exponentially bigger markets. Poetry is just a vehicle that takes me into there. So I think I always looked at my thing as like, a lot of the poets didn't understand it. I used to get a lot of backlash for making stuff on YouTube. They didn't understand it. They were.
Well, they say, why are you giving up for free? Why don't you?
Yeah, why you make it? The idea, it's not even given free. It's so far, it's such an alien concept now, but the idea of you going online and performing poems are like, this is not real poetry. It's like, it was either you written in a book or you did it on stage. Like, look, bro, there was a point where there was a big backlash in the poetry community against what I was doing. Because it was like, why are you doing this? Like, we don't do it like that. It was seen as like YouTube poetry. It's not real poetry. Do you get what I'm saying? But I kind of had the foresight. When I say I studied YouTube, there was a point in that time, like when I started, this we're talking about like 2009, 2000, like I started on YouTube, that's a long time ago, where like I could tell you who's the biggest on the platform, who's got the most views, how they got the most views. Like there was all these different hacks that I knew because I was very much to be like, how do I tie this into something that makes it bigger? You know, I started on Facebook, moved to YouTube. And so I've always had that, I want my art to be like a vehicle kind of mindset, you know, early days. So that's why I had Entrepreneurship Podcast. When I met Sol, who was my friend at the time, Old Street was known as the Silicon Roundabout. He started taking me around to a lot of his different startups. And it was always like, how do you lend like a creative lens to what's going on? How do you give them like content creation? How do you work? So I was in the ecosystem quite a lot. So I've seen a lot. I've seen startups start, burn and crash. I've seen startups go all the way. I've seen founders fall apart. Like I've had a very, very rich experience in specifically when it comes to tech. But like I said as well, my content was always about entrepreneurship. So one of the first conferences I got invited to was in Canada. First time I've been to Canada, Mastermind Talks. Go to Mastermind Talks. These guys are big stars now, but who's there? James Clear, James Altucher, Ryan Holiday, Tim Ferriss. Tim Ferriss was big at the time already, you know what I mean? But a lot of these people, like, so I've been in, like Dan Martell, he just blew up recently. I've known them for years. I did a poem for his wedding for him and everything, you know what I mean? So I've always kind of been like in and around that system just by virtue of like being passionate about it, being of value to it, but also like just creating work that resonates with that audience. I just need to actually just update my LinkedIn. That's one of the platforms I haven't focused on. Like, you know.
Oh, I think I'm started on LinkedIn. I hate that. I hate that platform. Very fiber in my being.
I need to. I've worked with so many brands, Nike, Facebook, like all these things. I need to kind of like. That's one thing. So I think people are still taken by surprise when they go into the offices. Like I was in the office the other day. It's in Phoenix Court. It's kind of like where all the portfolio companies are. I was in there the other day and the guy was like to me, what are you doing here? Why would you be here? And it happened to me multiple times. So I guess I don't put that out there enough.
No, and the truth is, when you've been doing something for a long time, like when you started super young, you actually have to edit what you, because it almost appears too much for people. Right? So when I say some of the random stuff I was doing at 13, 14, 15, it feels like you're making it up. People are like, how could you have done all of this stuff, right? So you have to become selective and just sharing certain things.
To make it consistent.
For some people's brain is too much. If you say, I do this and I run that and I do that, like,
it's confusing.
Three things, that's impossible. And you're like,
and you sound a bit unserious. I think maybe it's like, what do you really do?
They have no clue that sometimes in those different rooms, you're like a totally different person. So some people might meet you. Some people probably only know you as like, oh, you're the startup guy.
Yeah.
Yes. You know, and then there's some guys who are like, oh, you're the guy who I saw in university performing that sick poem where we all went nuts, right? And you have to sort of straddle those different lives and sort of stay true to your core, but know that the true you is both of those. It's not, you know.
It's many,
This is it. And I actually think there's a piece here, which is we are, because of the market economy we're in, specialization is generally speaking what most people need to do to be able to kind of move up and earn lots of money. You need to become a specialist in one thing. How do you maybe resist that temptation, or just stay true to yourself, which probably means wearing multiple hats, straddling multiple things, exploring multiple curiosities? I
went to Dubai recently. And when I went to Dubai, before it made me lose my train of thought. Oh yeah. So when I went there, I write a lot about marriage and relationships. Like I've written self-published books around it. You know what I mean? I only started writing about that during the lockdown. But when I went there, I had in my head like a certain kind of like conversation I'm gonna have with the people, you know, kind of like inspiration, entrepreneurship, like all the things I kind of touch on. And then I went there and the audience was 90% women. You know what I mean? And the conversation that has led them there was completely different because they've seen the stuff I wrote about relationships and marriage, and it's like this is a different level of engagement that they, you know, and that speaks to like as having experience and having to adapt. But it's kind of like the more time you have in your career, the more you start to realize you're just going to represent, like you said, different things for different people, and whatever you're feeling in that time, embrace that, because that's going to be an arc in your story. You know, it's kind of like the issue a lot of, and often compared to rap, because that's what hip hop's doing. One thing, the issue a lot of artists tend to have is that they come from the hood and they have this lifestyle and they rap about it. Then they're multi-millionaires living in the thing and they're still trying to rap about the things they don't relate to. You know what I'm saying?
I was in the gutter.
Yeah, like, it don't relate.
No, buddy.
It doesn't.
You drink sparkling water now.
Literally, bro. You know what I'm saying? You know? And that's what I think great art is, when you're doing it, because different people relate. And that's why I like someone like Nipsey Hussle. I like people that evolve and they kind of like talk about that. So I feel like for a long time when I was talking about relationships, I was like, I don't want to talk about this. Like, how's it benefiting people's lives? But I'm like, this is something that impacts certain people. And, you know, I may talk about fatherhood, that's going to resonate with certain people. I'm going to talk about, like, creativity. I'm going to build, like... And you realize that, especially in this day and age, you have the fortune of, like, telling your story to different people over a period of time. And you'll lose some along the way, but it gives you more depth.
I always tell people true artistry is, 1, committing to building publicly, and 2, committing to being misunderstood. I think if you can't do both... You're just not an artist. Yeah, if you're like, oh, I have to be in my room, perfect it all, then share it, get out of here. You're like, this is just not artistry. And 2, if you're like, everyone must think about me the way I think about myself, that's just not how it works. Some people, do you know, somebody called me the other day. They're like, oh, you're the podcast guy. And I thought to myself, that's patently ridiculous, because I never put I put out like 20 what do you mean and it almost offended me a bit to be like, I don't even do that sort of. But then I thought, actually, to you, I'm the podcast guy. That's fine. Yeah, I'm the podcast guy. That's fine. In another room, they never know. They'll be like, they never know I do podcasts, right?
You reach that level of maturity very early. You know what I mean? Like, it took me a while to embrace that. It took me a while to be like you said, that idea of people misunderstanding. Because I was like people be saying, oh, I saw you're about education, you're about school. And I was like, bro, I got bars. You ain't heard my stuff. You know what I mean? You ain't heard my stuff. But like, you know, I got stuff in, I wrote this in the ends. Like, I ain't talking about education, like, you know. But it's like, you start to realize that, you have different ways people are going to appreciate it. And like you said, even with the consistency part of building publicly, I think I was always very fortunate in the sense that, like, I never shied away from that. Like, sometimes I put stuff out and people be like, it's not ready. Like, one of the biggest things I'm having with my nephew at the moment, we're trying to develop something. He's young. And he keeps on talking about, it's not ready, we need to change this. I'm like, the first thing is never going to be good. Let's put it out there, then move on to the second one. I said, by the time we get to number 10, it'll be good. But you can't make number 1 expecting it to be good. And I think a lot of artists fall short of number 1. Like, I hate going to studio with artists, like, because they'll sit there, you want to smoke, you want to chill, you watch this. Bro, I ain't got time. I go in the studio with people, I'm in and out. It's and it's worked to my benefit when I was working with Faithless. They're like an electronic band. They've like 20 years of legacy. One of the biggest come out. They brought me into the studio and they were like, okay, like, do you listen to the track, go away? I was like, nah, let me just do it now. I just did it on the spot. They were like, you just did this now? I was like, yeah, of course. They brought me into the studio again. We did 6 more tracks. They were like, this is amazing. They invited me up to their place. We did like 5, 6 more tracks, to the point where I was on their first album. We went to Glastonbury together and I got like 6, 7 more tracks on their next album, because it's like people, like productivity, like, you know, is more important than like perfectionism. You're
like the marrying of like the artistic flair, the artistic depth, all that sort of stuff. But then the entrepreneurial, like, let's get it on, like kind of that machine, like, you know. And Van Gogh, I remember reading at some stage, was like that, in that he would paint every single day and would paint, I forgot the number, like a ridiculous amount of paintings, you know, just churn it out. Just churn it out. Now, one of them is like, oh my God, this, whatever. But most of them, it's just part of the reps, if you like, right? And that's so, I mean, it seems like you figured that piece out as well.
When I became a professional, I understood the difference between being a professional
that's it.
And being a creator. I understood there's value in being a professional.
That's
and,
it.
yeah, and when you start to meet artists on the highest level of their thing, you realize they're professionals.
Yeah.
You know, and that's how they treat the art. Not saying they're not creative. We all love creative. I could sit here for 10 days and work on one thing. I could 100% do that. I love doing that, immerse myself, but I'm a professional now.
Yeah.
And what you realize when you start to be a professional, you actually become a better artist because you put your productivity ahead of your emotions. Do you get what I'm saying? You have to do that. I mean, my favorite artists have hundreds of songs. I can remember probably 3 verses off head. You know what I mean? But they've done millions of verses, thousands of verses.
Yeah.
But that's how it works. The more you do, the more likely you are to make that stuff that sticks. But you can't be so self-indulgent and entitled to feel like I know exactly what's perfect every time. Nah, it's a waste of time.
And it's so crazy you say that because I mean that is the language. That is it. Is the difference between someone that's a hobby, you know, you call yourself creative, whatever, and someone's like, I'm an athlete, like I'm a professional.
Yes.
Because it's that. I mean, Seth Godin used to have it. Seth Godin's like, you know, marketing.
Yeah, I know who he is,
goat for. No, I'm even
Purple
thinking about
cow.
people I know. For you, purple madness of, you know, your thing. But for some who maybe looking to study his work, I would say a marketing goat. I mean, there was some stage where his website was or his blog, Seth's blog was the most visited, like, you know, site in the world, or blog site in the world. And he has this thing of, you know, write every single day. No, he has a daily blog that every single day he writes. And he was saying, oh gosh, I forgot the quote now. As literally as I was setting that up, I think he was saying something like, write, you know, on a good day, and on a bad day, show me your bad writing. Yeah. Like essentially, just write, and move it away from this romantic spot of, you know, people talk about writer's block, you know, when do I feel inspired?
Yeah.
I need to go to Cannes, or I need to go to Marseille to read. And it's like, that's lovely. But like, come to terms with the fact that you're an athlete and you just need to be putting things out.
You need to be consistent. No, yeah. I want to quote 2 people in case you can clip it and it goes viral anyway. No, it's good.
Do it for
They're
us.
quite popular. So Alex Hormozy, he's like quite big online, and he has that big thing. He has that big research that he often quotes when he goes, there was a group of students and they were told to one group was told like, make as many clay pots as you can within like a certain period of time. And the other group was told that within this period of time, make the best ever clay pot that you can make. And then after that, when everyone revealed their findings, they realized that the group that was told to make as many as possible ended up making better clay pots than the group that was told to just focus on making one really, really perfect. Because you get it from all the swings. The more swings you take, you know. And there's this other guy, Sam Sulik, who's very viral. You know Sam Sulik?
Sorry.
Yeah, so he's like...
I thought you say Simon Sinek?
No, not Simon Sinek. No, Sam Sulik, not Simon Sinek.
I know Sam.
Yeah, and his whole thing, he's got this phrase where he's always like, the guy that the person that likes walking is going to go further than the person that likes the destination. Yeah. And I think that's such a powerful quote because it's walking, and then when you walk, you get to the destination. But if you're just waiting for that destination,
so good. I mean, I'm getting fired up now because I'm like, you're speaking my language, and also I think it's going to be helpful to so many young people because this is what I was going to close with. I was going to ask you just like, I know legacy is such a big word, right? You know, people are like, you know, this sounds like something, you think about your deathbed or something like that. But I just mean it in that, you know, I said to you at the start, just before we start recording, that one thing we're interested in doing, at least on this podcast, is giving people patterns that they can follow.
Yeah.
And I think that's what legacy actually is to live a sort of life where you leave clues and you say, this is my pattern, and you have a pattern worth following. Every statue at some stage is torn down by angry BLM protesters. I'm joking. It's torn down, right? Every bench. I remember I was going for a walk with a friend recently. I saw this bench, and it was in honor of blah blah blah. blah. So we were reading a little kind of plaque that was next to it, and we're like, we should sit down. Bird pee all over it. I was like, okay. So we walked away, and it's just sad that all these monuments and these little things, they at some stage just But if you leave people a pattern of life, like, that's such a powerful legacy because they pass it on.
Yeah,
and they just pass it. I mean, before you know, you got people who are embracing creativity. You got people who are marrying multiple, like you all of that because you did it and they watched it 10 years ago. So when you reflect on the kind of legacy you're trying to leave, what comes to mind?
I just have like an overarching, like I want to have that idea. Like I used to be like, I want to be the greatest poet ever, but I feel like Shakespeare's kind of like solidified. And now, you know, you're not gonna like generally. Then when I look at like my targets, I'm like, okay, those are the people I'm looking at. I have no business caring about the person that's doing it right now, and what the person whose name transcends. So for me, it's like, when it comes to storytelling, I just want to be known as one of the greatest to be able to do that. You know what I mean? To be able to take the microphone and communicate ideas to people, you know, very much in philosophy and all that kind of stuff. You know, that's how I see it on like the macro level, you know. That's what wakes me up and be like, when I'm tired, you got to keep doing this, you know. It's the same way, you know, Kobe woke up and he rest in peace, Kobe, you know what I mean? I think one of the things that I got to see that Kobe was made very fortunate for my generation. I grew up in the Kobe Iverson generation, and so Michael Jordan was already established as the greatest, not like, you know, but Kobe pursued that. We got to see what it was like to pursue greatness, you know what I mean? And even though we say that he fell short, that journey and that story of watching someone pursue greatness was so aspirational and so inspiring that now I see the value in, you may not get there, but the value of letting people see that you were striving, you know, that Kobe immortalized the idea of chasing greatness. And I think everybody should aspire to that. And I think that is honorable in itself, even as honorable as getting the greatness, being like, I put in everything and, you know, and I'm happy with everything that I put in. So for me, that's a very important like message to leave for young people, but also to leave for my kids, to be like, the pursuit is honorable, you know, so don't sell yourself short, you know what I mean? Let people know that you pursued, and wherever you end up, but you put on like a hell of a show on the way there, you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I love that, man. Yeah. Wow, yeah, I love that. That resonates. Yeah, that resonates. And we can carry on. We could carry on. I want to honor your time. So you've said hip hop a few times now, right?
Yeah.
So this is now where some division may come on the podcast. You're Mount Rushmore.
Oh, come on, you can't do that.
No, I can. You said hip hop. You said Jay-Z. I accepted Jay-Z. You know. I was thinking, what are the three? Suli put on?
I don't know, man. I haven't had this conversation in so long, bro. Like
you've said. You've said Iverson, you said you've been in that, you've been hinting, and this GOAT combo. I was like, we have to go there. So your hip hop, you know, Rushmore. I assume Jay-Z's there.
Yeah, come on.
Okay, so Jay-Z's there.
Yeah.
If Jay-Z's there, someone else should be there. But I'll let you.
Nas is there. Nas is there.
Good.
Nas is there.
Okay,
Nas is
I actually would agree with Nas.
Yeah, Nas is there.
Yeah,
but
not many people would agree. I think some people would disagree, but they're just not super into hip hop like that.
I guess, but I grew up in peak Nas versus Jay-Z era. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, but then it's tough, bro, because it's like, you want to honor the legends, but then you've got people that are in the game right now. You know what I mean? Where you've got like, I don't know. It's like you got Kendrick, you got Drake, and it's like, these guys are heavyweights now.
But before both of them, there's still something you haven't said.
What do you mean? Like, what can I say? Initially, the list would have been, it would have been Tupac, it would have been Jay-Z, Nas, and then I would have been big in there. But it's because I see the two of them as like, I think it's because I see the two of them as like going head to head. It's like, you know, it's kind of like Messi versus Ronaldo. It's like you can't put them, you know what I mean? Like, because both of them, one was so good that they elevated each other, you know what I'm saying?
Where's Kanye?
Oh yes, Yeezy. Oh yes.
I was waiting for you. When you said Kendrick, I was like,
you know what? No. You know what? Kanye's actually one of my favorite artists ever. I've had this thing in the subconsciously in the back of my head. Is that on a public platform I have to be careful when I mention Kanye because it got on bare platforms.
We can still talk about his artistry.
Yeah, no, I agree. So I've kind of absconded him from my mind when I'm on public platforms. Yeah, because I'm like, oh man, like Kanye's in the red right now. Do you guys say?
This is it. You never know when my age. That's
what I'm saying.
Maybe I'll love him in the future, but you know what? Kanye's the best.
No, but Yeezy's the truth. Like when it comes to Yeezy, like it's the truth. I think because I was just thinking of like rivalries.
And also in terms of your life and how you live a blended life and mixing different things, that's College
Dropout is one of the most profound things I've ever listened to. Like, and that's what I think artists. When I've listened to every single Kanye album.
Correct.
I remember listening to College Dropout on the CD. You know, we got home. You know, back then me and my cousin listened to music. We turn off all the lights. You put on an album and you sit down and you go through it. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Right, yeah, when the albums are actually a thing.
That album, and that was a story for man. Do you understand? And I was like, bro, how did he put this together? Man. So even if you look at my stuff, like, you know, Why I Hate School, Love Education, it was like, he allowed me to see like, because other personas I couldn't relate to them. Some of them are hustlers, gangsters, but it's like how to craft an identity within your industry and kind of like build on that, you know. So yeah, of course.
You relate Biggie. How can you relate? You grew up in Woolwich.
Yeah.
Someone saw Biggie was talking about. I was at church, respectfully. Okay.
Nah.
I was like, I can't relate to this guy. But Kanye, I was like,
Yeezy,
yo, like his mom, like
Yeezy's the truth,
I said,
man.
come on, man, this is my guy.
And also, he's had like
Creative
when you look
genius.
at his catalog.
Oh my lord.
That's what generational back to back. You
And
know,
just raps.
Just you know,
Raps.
So
Not all of them are great raps.
Not all of them, but some
But they're raps.
he misses sometimes. But
Yeah.
like you said, but he's had a lot of hits. We're talking about College Dropout,
Correct.
you know, Late Registration, talking about Love Lockdown,
Yeah.
My Beautiful Twisted
Even away from
Fantasy.
his own work,
Yeah.
his work behind the scenes, like his production work, his mixing,
Bro, I watched the Yeezus. What was the documentary
Yeezus
called?
documentary. I still
Genius.
haven't watched
Yeah,
it.
bro, I was emotional, man.
I'm waiting.
It's so
I
emotional.
told myself I want to watch it end of this year.
Bro, it's so
I wanted
emotional.
all the hype to die
Yeah, I
down.
hate it
I
when
want
you
to
watch
give it
stuff,
multiple
yeah,
years,
yeah.
and now I'm gonna watch it.
It was I was so emotional watching that. You know what I mean? Yeah, and a friend of mine actually works with him, so I was actually talking about him. Well, he was working with him. We can't work with him right now. So we were actually talking about him. I was actually talking about him the other time, yeah. But yeah, so really, Kanye's there just because he released that track recently, which is like... it's like, bro, I can't defend.
I do not stand by that track.
I can defend it. I can defend Yeezy, yeah, but it's like at some point it's like, bro, like you're making it very difficult for me.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
And even his latest releases, like just even how he's releasing stuff, just random. What was that album he put on like his own website, and you had to go and I was just like, you're starting to lose me. But
he's a creative genius.
For me, he solidified his position
in hip hop, yeah, without a doubt.
Creative genius.
Yeah, it's creative genius. Without a doubt.
On that agreement, so we just to be clear, we respect Kanye's art.
We respect
and
his art.
and
respect
and
him,
everything.
yeah.
We do not stand or support all
of his views,
behavior and views,
all of his
and any future behavior and views after the aforementioned date of this particular podcast recorded in London.
That's a good disclaimer, bro. That's a good disclaimer. I like that.
Suli, thanks so much for doing this, man.
Pleasure's
This was
all
great.
mine,
This
bro.
was great.
Pleasure's all mine.